All right, welcome everybody back to another episode of the Big Douglas Show. Make sure that you have subscribed, hit the notification button so you never miss an episode. It's a super Monday. The crew is here. George Carmi, Adam and Eva. Fellas, what's happening? Always, it was an easy week where we could just enjoy ourselves. Adam, what is your routine like for the bye week?
Well, as you can see, I'm full draft mode already. So like I'm watching I'm watching the night games mostly, a little bit in the day games, but for the most part, I'm just watching college prospects right now. This is the funnest time of year for me.
This is one of the reasons we're so lucky to have you. I know you grind in the tape like nobody else. We'll get there
Oh yeah,
eventually.
there's plenty of
I
time.
promise. We're not quite there yet. We won't make everybody dive into it with us, but I'm excited to get into it, and there are a lot of prospects that can help this team in the future for sure. George, are you a red zone guy? Is this do you turn football off completely and decompress? What is Sundays like for you on the bye week?
I'm typically a red zone guy, so typically it was nice, man. I think it's fun just watching stress-free football because we love the game so much. We love the Commanders so much. It was no heartbreak. There's no stress this week. We could actually watch the games in peace. And typically what I do is kind of sit back, relax, watch Red Zone, order a pizza. It's kind of crappy weather. It rained all day Sunday in Maryland. So I was like, I'm not even leaving the house today. Pajamas, kind of taking it easy. And then what I did is, later on is kind of watched the big games. I watched the Eagles-Cowboys game, watched the 49ers, Seahawks games, kind of enjoyed those and soaked it in. And it was awesome, man. I love football. And it's just fun watching competitive, really high-level football too. I love our team, but it's just really nice kind of watching, come back from behind wins. It's competitive games. It's fun to watch.
I did too, and there was some good football being played the other day. I also always make sure to check out a movie or two with my wife on a Sunday during the bye week. This week we did Leave the World Behind. Have you seen this, either one of you?
No, I don't even know what it is. What's
Okay,
it
so
about?
Yeah, I was gonna watch that too.
brand new Netflix. It's Julia Roberts.
Oh,
It's Ethan Hawke. It is I will not even begin to butcher the guy from True Detective's name. But anyway, in the Green Book, I believe he was in. It's fantastic,
okay.
and the ending. At any rate, I won't give it up. I thought it was interesting. So yeah, check that one out and tell me what you think about that. George, we've got there was a presser today. Ron spoke. Let's listen to a little bit of it.
Yeah, sounds good. Let me pull it up really quickly. Give me one moment.
Maybe it wasn't fantastic.
For the most part, it was a productive week of self-scout. But, the biggest thing we got to see in terms of watching what Sam has done, and some of the things that he's improved on, you start seeing his footwork has been really good. A couple of things is just a little more confidence in stepping up and with those eyes downfield consistently. When he's done that, he's been very, very effective, and he's created some really good opportunities for us downfield. Secondly, continue to grow in helping with setting the protections and making the checks in terms of reading the pressures that are coming and then again decision making and getting the ball out quickly. I mean, he's done a great job with all of that. As he continues to develop with that, that's going to really help and really it's going to take some of the extra pressure.
George, how tough do you think these are for him to do at this point?
Very tough, man. That's what I was thinking about right here. I was like, you know what? Like, he has nothing to talk about anymore. His selling point is Sam Howell and basically how he's developing. That's all he has to talk about.
Well, the biggest thing more than anything else was, it happened during the game, and he came off for a second. They checked him, and he said he was fine. He went back out there, finished the game, but he was still having a little bit of trouble the next morning. And so they examined him, and then they felt that he needed to get an MRI. And after getting the MRI,
this is the Jamin Davis injury, right?
I guess so. Yeah.
Unfortunate. Young man's done a great job for us, and really excited about who he's becoming.
He had a good year. He had a good year.
They got an interesting decision on his fifth-year option
I was
coming
gonna say we should talk about that in a minute. Yeah.
A little bit of the mic in some of the situations when Cody was down, but that's all part of his growth and learning, and he's done a nice job.
Where did you see him take the biggest strides?
Jamin, this year, I think a big part of it is, as a will linebacker, playing playing that position and being able to read and get downhill, watching him run through and make plays, watching him in his coverage.
They spent a big time thinking he was going to be a Mike
A lot
linebacker.
of really good backs.
Yeah.
And he was competitive doing that.
It again will be, I think,
the more he
no
plays,
disrespect to
the better
Jamin,
he's
but will be one of
Sure, he made
Ron's
some
biggest
mistakes,
mistakes.
but man,
That
he
was
really
that was
coming
one of
along.
those early drafts where you really needed a home run.
He'll get it
Could have
taken
traded
care
up for
of.
Fields. Could have taken Darisaw. I've said that
Ron, over
repeatedly.
these last couple of
Absolutely.
days, the staff and maybe yourself, what were you able to accomplish? You mentioned kind of the self-evaluation. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Well, without getting into the X's and O's of some of the things, but it was really good. An opportunity to see some of the things, and now getting ready for this. These last 4 games, this last stretch, it's all about now playing well, playing fast, and working to win football games.
Already kind of the makeup of this team, the mental toughness. These next 4 games, is this kind of reaffirm of how you want them to play and what you want to see, because you already kind of know what they're made of in a sense.
Yeah, to a degree, it's most certainly that's what it's all about. I mean, it really is
I've talked to several beat reporters over the last couple of weeks and
it has
asked
to be a
them if they
mentality
thought,
about
since they're
coming
in the locker room,
being a
had he
professional,
lost it.
doing what a professional does,
But
come to work.
the
work hard,
remarks, and we talk about this
He's
too,
out
but the
there and
remarks
do the
coming
best.
out of Chicago from Sweat makes it feel like that locker room went a long time ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And
They
they're
gave,
all just punching the clock and doing their
I
jobs.
think
Yep.
he still has a lot of room to grow. I really do, just because
Yeah, let's
coming
get
out
to
of
this
college,
last question and we can kind of
had one
debrief in a second.
really good
Yeah.
year, and it was more of a process of him developing and learning to do the things that it takes to be at this level. And he's really kind of taken a step each year. This year, I thought he took a really big step, especially working with Cody. I thought he and Cody developed a really good rapport. And unfortunately, like I said, we lost Cody for 4 weeks, but Jamin stepped in and was able to work in and do some of the stuff that the Mike backer typically does. But then when Cody got back and you started to watch the two of them playing together, you could really see him start to get comfortable at the will position again. So, those are things that are important as far as what he does, and that is he's an athletic, physical guy that can run.
And along
Let's bring it on home. Yeah, guys, what are some of your takeaways from the video, from the press conference? What do you guys think?
what I've walked away from is you don't have good enough linebackers to just give up on Davis at the mic. I don't understand why. After Barton went down, I thought, okay, let's put him at the mic. Let him get his lumps. Let's see where they are. But to put him in and out to weak side Mike, some of the play calls, I don't get it, because exactly like we were talking about earlier, they're gonna have to decide on a 5th-year option.
Yeah.
And I don't think you're gonna pay that kind of money. Number one, for a weak side linebacker. Number two, for an underperforming weak side linebacker. I think that if you really wanted to see what you had going forward, you line them up at the mic, you see how it goes full time. That's where I'm confused. So
Yeah, gotcha. I'm actually pulling up the weak side linebacker 5th-year options while we're talking. So Doug, jump ahead.
Jalen, what's happening, buddy?
What's up? Can you hear me?
Yeah, we're here now.
All right, cool. What's up? How you doing?
Good. We just finished watching the Ron presser from today. And so the first thing of note in that thing is that Jamin Davis is out for the year. Your early thoughts on that?
My initial thought was, wow, it's crazy coming off probably his best game of his career. But it's just what we've known as Washington fans. We can't be accustomed to anything nice. Anything nice we have, it tends to go away pretty rapidly. So it's just a recurring theme of my whole lifespan as being a Washington fan is that whenever we have nice things, whether it be RG3, whether it be Kirk Cousins, he didn't spend too many years as a starter here. So whenever we have nice things, they tend to vanish pretty quickly. So that's just a recurring thing with my fandom in my lifetime as a Washington fan. So that was my initial thought as far as Jamin Davis.
Adam was saying that he thought maybe that in the presser Ron refers to him as the will linebacker, as he should, because that's what he's been playing. But Adam thought maybe they moved off of him being the Mike too fast. They obviously drafted him in the first round as a Mike linebacker. Maybe something a new coaching staff will revisit.
To be honest, and my friends Tay and Todd, because we actually watched that draft together, I said that day that Jamin Davis wasn't a middle linebacker. Because just some of the things that you saw in college, the instincts weren't there. And a lot of the times in Kentucky, he was lined up off the ball where he had a lot of free releases where a lot of the D linemen were stacked up, particularly on Jamin Davis' side. If you go back and watch a lot of 2020 Kentucky film, a lot of the D linemen, they had a lot of odd alignments. And I think a lot of that was to get Jamin a lot of free roam and things like that because he wasn't capable of shedding blockers like a middle linebacker in the NFL is expected to do. So I think that he's a natural will, and I think that they were forcing a square piece in a round hole, putting him there at the middle linebacker at first. But from his career, I haven't really seen much better middle linebacker play. So if you have somebody that is capable of coaching him up to be that middle linebacker, now I know instincts is something that can and can't be taught. But if you have, a defensive aficionado like a Brian Flores to come in and coach this defense, I think that Jamin has the capabilities and the tools. Maybe not the instincts, but he does have all the athletic tools to play that Mike linebacker.
He does. I agree. And just real quickly, sorry to interrupt you, Doug. Arch kind of touched on it as well. The fifth-year option is about $13.3 million for Jamin Davis if they elect to go that route.
Jalen, you paying that?
Damn, I thought you. Damn, yeah, exactly. I don't know about all that.
That's a lot of money. And he was a first-round draft pick, so I guess it just typically falls with a pay scale.
Yeah.
And that's what kind of bummed me out about the injury today, because if he built upon that, I still would be a little bit hesitant, but I might be a little bit more confident if he gave me 5 and 6 games of what I saw last week as opposed to just one. But that is a lot of money to be playing a weak side linebacker who you don't know if he's like a Pro Bowl talent. Like, what is Jamin Davis? What is his?
Yeah.
Well, I remember Fred Smoot told me one time, tell me why to be somewhere, not where. Don't tell me where to be, tell me why. And that way, when things are rolling real fast, I don't have to think back on what it was. Like, I understand why I need to be there. I understand how it fits. And so I wonder, like, I've made it a point to try to not kick this group on their way out because I don't think it's necessary. But, like, really, with some of these guys, I'm really curious as to how they fit in with better coaching. Because, I mean, look at Sweat in Chicago. No, George, what did you think about we could talk about Sweat's performance, which is fine. What did you think about the comments? Because that has more to do with us than his performance in Chicago.
I think it's telling and important, man. I think we should have been paying attention to this for a long time now. So for one, I think after the Bears game, we got embarrassed on national television. That Thursday night game, we were all hyped up. They told us to come out, fans come out of the game, come out and watch us. We're down 27-3 at halftime. One of the most embarrassing games I've seen. We lost 2 games to the Giants, one against Tommy DeVito. Our defense basically was supposed to be top 10 in the league. At worst, an average defense. We are rock bottom, the worst defense in the entire league in regard to score points per game. It's just fallen out. And I think just looking at that, just looking at the talent that we potentially have. I know we sometimes have like rose-colored glasses, right? Our defense is pretty talented. Maybe these guys are really good. Maybe they're not. We kind of have our own perception of it. But we are not a 32nd ranked defense in the entire league. I think our players are checked out. And I think you can kind of tell about the little subtle like jabs that, Chase Young's doing, Montez Sweat's doing. There's a great article by Jeremy Fowler. I don't know if you guys read it, but just talked about how like the players in the locker room aren't really buying in at all. It was funny. It was more directed at Eric Bieniemy more than Jack Del Rio, to be honest with you. It's more like, the times of the meeting, the days of the meeting, the lengths of the meeting. So it just seems like it's a mismatch and people aren't happy there and people are willing to leave. And you hear it with John Allen. John Allen's supposed to be the captain. He's supposed to be our leader. But he's like, I'm thinking about leaving. My eyes are elsewhere. It's not good in D.C. right now. And that's kind of like what I'm thinking about is we're trying to build to the future, but what do we have? Like, I guess the question for the group, who do we keep? Who's even worth investing in? Because I think everybody is kind of mediocre right now. I don't really know who's worth paying and who's keeping around, to be honest with you guys.
I can think of 5.
Maybe.
Right? I mean, you got
defense,
the 2 outside corners that have to stay. You got the 2 defensive tackles, and I'd bring Curl back. And the rest of them I'm not sure about because I don't think there's a natural free safety on the roster. I don't think there's a natural modern NFL middle linebacker on the roster. I guess if you're telling me Jamin Davis is back at the will, then you've got a will linebacker. You got 2 defensive tackles that you're paying a ton of money to. It sounds like one of them's going to get moved. And the other D tackle is Jalen's favorite.
No, absolutely. And you keep see, I'm writing off Jonathan Allen. And the reason that I say that is because we don't have any money guarantee left on this deal. And he sounds like a guy that's 1 foot out of the door. So when you say those 2 defensive tackles, right, I'm counting in my head almost as if it's 1, because I know we're not trading Daron Payne just simply because that'd be too big of a hit to the cap. So I know that he's so far, I feel like he's the most untouchable player just simply because of that. But other than that, as far as the entire roster, other than Daron Payne, I don't have anybody else that I may deem untouchable or who can't go. I love Terry McLaurin. But Terry McLaurin will be 29 next year. And for a guy who's a speed demon, these lower body injuries everybody's talking about. And I agree that the turf toe has played to some of his lack of production this year. But guess what? He's not getting any younger. And all those lower body extremity injuries, they just tend to pile on. And for a guy like a speed demon like Terry, that doesn't, have a good forecast for the future. I love Terry McLaurin. He's probably my favorite player on the team. But other than that, Daron Payne is the only untouchable to me. Cam Curl's a tremendous player, but Cam Curl hasn't forced the turnover since the pandemic, right? Like, he hasn't forced the turnover since everybody.
I'm with you. Yeah,
because everybody was wearing masks. So I'm just at least the exception, right? So, at the beginning of this past offseason, about a year ago, maybe like January, at the beginning of the last offseason, I remember his father making a tweet, and I'm not saying that it was regarding Cam, but who else would it be regarding about? When he was like, we don't want 20 mil, we're not hearing it, right? And we're talking about Cam Curl. As Cam Curl gave you $20 million production at the safety position. And I love Cam Curl. Cam Curl's a solid player. He tackles well, which is something you take for granted in the NFL with a defense that isn't full of great tacklers. And you speak back to like a guy like Jamin Davis, Cam Curl has that, those instincts and things that builds him out with some of the physical limitations there. But is that worth $20 million a year? I don't think so.
And that's one thing I want to kind of jump in real quick, right? So we have $90 million in cap. Where are we going to spend that money, right? So, like, let's say $14-15 million goes to Cam Curl, 10, 12 goes to Jamin Davis. For one, they're, everything we need this offseason are all big ticket items, right? Cornerbacks, linebackers, whatever, left tackles, we all that stuff, right? They're all big ticket items. So where's the spending going to go towards? And, we obviously have grown attached to these players, so we learn their histories, where they come from. We follow them from the draft. But, we had a 32nd ranked defense. Are we willing paying for these people that aren't producing that much? We can blame it on coaching, but it is something to consider. We have to look at all angles, in my opinion.
No, I agree. And it's interesting. Jalen brought up Terry, and I tweeted earlier today, would you say the Chiefs, last pick in the first for Terry? The odd thing is I did essentially the same thing a year ago when A.J. Brown was traded, and nobody on the planet was trading Terry for anything less than 2 firsts. And today, the consensus after that post, people were willing to let Terry go for a 3rd. I have never seen a move so quick. But it shows the fan base, I think, is really behind what is looking like a true rebuild. Adam, when they start this offseason, realistically, how long does it take them to get this thing sorted out?
Well, you look at teams like Miami, Jacksonville, it can be even Detroit, for that matter. If you can make some right personnel moves, things can change in a hurry. But you said it. I think we're finally going to see the much needed rebuild. I think nobody is off limits. You mentioned it, Daron Payne. He's probably one of the only ones based on salary. I don't see him moving, but I see an opportunity. Not just, you talked about the end of the first round. So what I look at that is with their extra 2nd, 3rd, this is ways new ownership can move up. So, everyone, you see all the mocks, the first 3 picks, everyone wants O-line. That's not going to happen. An analytics-based organization is not going to do that. They'll definitely, select some offensive linemen, but I think they're going to take positions of need, positions with high percentage. And nobody wants to talk about tight ends too. That's going to be a huge position that they need to look at as well. But if you can just move some guys that, you're not sure about in the next 2-3 years, because that's what I think it is, a 2-3 year based on a start rebuild, new GM, new coach, because it's total gut right now. That's what I think is acceptable. The whole Ron scenario, he came in with some pieces. So I think that the maturation, everything should happen faster. But with him, he ignored chemistry. I think that's exactly what he ignored. We started with Sam Mills. They got rid of him. Turner got rid of him at the end of that, and we hear this stuff with Eric Bieniemy. And I think a lot less shots should be taken at Eric Bieniemy and just more about the overall chemistry with everything. Sure, players are going to complain about, new rule. They're used to more of a lax atmosphere. So, I can understand that. But I think that if you look at his history, and granted, it doesn't have an NFL team until now, Harris and a lot of his constituents, what they did in Philadelphia, what they did with the New Jersey Devils. I don't claim to watch a lot of basketball and hockey, but what I do know is I saw their records after he came in, and a lot of the moves, he always had a centerpiece that he liked, but he moved who he had to. And in the NFL, unlike those sports, draft picks are more essential. In the NBA, NHL, it's that first pick that matters everything. In the NFL, we've seen these 4th, 5th round, sometimes 6th round picks can be cornerstones for your organization. So I think you come in, I think a guy like John Allen, I think you have to move him now. I think that, the talk of getting a first round, that's out the window. But I think if you're talking about day two picks for a lot of these guys that are just making so much money anyways, I think to do the rebuild right, I love White from Tampa Bay, the middle linebacker coming in here. I love Burns, the Carolina defensive end. And I say take those two as your free agent, your prize as a free agent. You go and draft and you make some moves. I think this team can get better in the hurry. But again, you got to get a good GM that's going to bring the right staff together. It's all going to be about chemistry and how quickly can everything click.
George, as Adam mentioned EB, and it got me thinking, it feels to me like, and maybe this is just me, I'm curious your thought, EB is the guy that is like skating on this thing. To me, they're scoring 2 more points a game than they did last year, and people couldn't wait to run Turner out of town. To me, all these things, they have made a lot of concessions to run what EB wants to do, not just on offense, but across the board. And it feels like it's been everybody's fault from EB. I'm curious your thoughts on George on EB, and where does he coach next year? You tell me.
That's what I was going to say. I think it's almost undoubtedly that he's going to leave DC. Like, we thought that maybe he would be the coach potentially, in waiting and take over Washington. I don't see that happening anymore. And I think coming here, I think he will be, looking elsewhere and potentially being in that coaching cycle. But I wonder how engaging or how intriguing he's going to be. I feel like there's so many other like up and coming younger offensive minded coaches that are more appealing, right? We have the Miami's offensive coordinator. We have Ben Johnson out of Detroit. We have Brian Johnson out of the Eagles. Like, there's so many potential offensive coordinators that are up and coming. And Eric Bieniemy's like the whispers coming out of DC aren't necessarily positive, right? I guess the one thing that they could say that he's developed somehow potentially well, but I don't think he's going to be a popular choice. And I think going back to our original conversation, it's going to be a complete gutting of our team. And I'm looking forward to it. I know it sounds kind of crazy to say that, but for years and years, we kind of like Bruce Allen, we're close, and we've always kind of like put a Band-Aid on the situation. Like, we're going to get Ryan Fitzpatrick, and with our defense, we'll be pretty good. Or we're going to get Alex Smith. He's going to potentially carry it on from Kirk Cousins. Like, we're always trying to find a veteran fix to kind of keep the team together. But I think we're not that close. And I think playing the Dolphins and playing the Cowboys, you just kind of see how far away we are. We were non-competitive against the Cowboys. We were non-competitive against the Dolphins. We are not there yet. So I think we have to start from scratch and go from the way up.
Jalen, I got to go back to the Sweat comments. I mean, he said he's been gone for 6 weeks now? I mean, how long has it been since the trade deadline? And he's saying they were checked out then. Yeah. I understand that the new owner was in a tough position. I've always said I didn't think – I was surprised when they fired the defensive coordinator. I thought everybody would ride. Anybody watching the show knows that's what I thought. And yet now it feels like they're doing everybody a disservice by keeping Ron here if indeed – they have lost the locker room. I know that it doesn't make much sense, but I think we all have done this long enough. Also, this is going to get worse as the season goes on. You could almost feel it. Jalen, what do they do at this point? Just keep riding, right?
Circling back to those Sweat comments, what that told me was, like you said, he's been gone for about 6 weeks. So they were checked out in October. They were checked out at the beginning of the season, right? And what that told me is that, I don't know, the new ownership let him know, hey, Ron, anything short of a Super Bowl, you're cooked, you're gone. And in turn, is that what the result was? And if you just harken back, going to, some of the fan dialogue, with Ron Rivera's persona on the sidelines, and he just seemed like a guy that's been checked out since week 1. And I tried to give him the benefit of the doubt with the cancer. He's not as riled up as he's been since Carolina. With so many things that's happened in the Washington organization, and when you hear some comments like that, which Montez Sweat said yesterday, those are pretty damning because it goes along with what we've all been saying, right? It almost gave us validation. It almost gave us verification for what we've been thinking. And it's that these guys have been checked out since basically last year, right? And it's like Ron was a lame duck coach. So if you step back and look at it as an even bigger lens, like what is Eric Bieniemy's purpose here? If he was under a lame duck coach, is he coaching to develop Sam Howell? Is he coaching for his next head coaching job? What is it? And then you go to Jack Del Rio. He seems like he just didn't care about the defense. The schemes they were either too complex or they were too simple. And when you listen to our players, they were saying about the complexity of the scheme. But if you go back, and not even with the player comments, if you go back, think about since maybe the Denver Broncos game, there has almost been a perfect play call for almost every defense. It's almost like, oh, we're going to be lined up in cover 2, 60-yard bomb to Marvin Mims, like that week after week. So is it like, are we not changing anything? Are there not being any adjustments being made? So, I mean, those Sweat comments going back to the initial premise is that just confirmed everything that we've been saying, right?
100%.
Yes, it's interesting, Jalen, as you mentioned. Where I thought you were going with that was our players saying it's too complicated, and every opposing team saying that it was so easy. They knew exactly what was going on.
Yeah, absolutely. Like which one is it?
Okay, I tasked you, gentlemen, with bringing to me. Let's move on to something more fun to talk about than this team. Your top 5 MVP candidates for the NFL as we stand now. George, let's start with you.
Damn, I put the pressure on me. All right, so I'm going to start off with this, right? Y'all aren't going to like this, but it's true. The number 1 contender right now is Dak Prescott, the MVP of the league, man. He really is. I don't have the stats directly in front of me, but he has an outrageous ratio. I think it's 28 touchdowns to 6 interceptions or something crazy like that. 3rd in the league in the NFL. Leading, one of the best teams in the NFC. I think the key to getting the MVP is being the top team in the NFC, right? So whoever's going to kind of get to that part. But I think Dak Prescott has been on fire ever since November, and he's proved it, man. He had a great year so far.
28 to 6, George.
28 to 6, man. So and he's 3rd in the league in passing too. And what, their team's 10-3 right now. I think number 1. I think the 49ers are technically the number 1 seed, but the Cowboys are number 2. But yeah, so they're up there. So I think Dak Prescott's up there. This is kind of an interesting one. I don't necessarily agree with it, but I think this is how the NFL thinks. I think people are looking at Brock Purdy a little bit too, man. I think the 49ers are they're damn good. Brock Purdy is putting up numbers because people wanted to count him out, but he's putting up numbers, man. I think he played the Eagles last week for 4 touchdowns against them. The Eagles defense isn't as good as we thought it was, just for the record, but I think Brock Purdy is still putting up numbers. Kyle Shanahan's cooking with them. The 49ers are fun to watch right now. My number 3.
Brock Purdy, just real quick, George. If Brock Purdy wins, then they should just change it to a quarterback award because he's not
exactly right
on his own team.
Exactly right. So because the 49ers are well-rounded, it's not just Brock Purdy. To that end, this is my favorite player in the NFL, my favorite non-commander, Tyreek Hill, man. I think Tyreek Hill is freaking badass. I think if he breaks a 2,000-yard mark and sets an NFL record, then you have to give it to him. It's not right for him not to get it. I think he definitely deserves it in regard to that. If you're breaking any NFL record, he should have that consideration in regard to that.
Did you see, George, the interview from Mike McDaniel talking about his conversation with Greer about the opportunity to get Tyreek? And he said Tyreek Hill is the only non-quarterback in the league that moves that you trade for, that you have to.
He's that special.
Here's what you want. You can have it. The only non-quarterback in the league, according to him.
Let me ask some fun. I'm gonna throw you guys a question, right? Because I heard it in sports talk radio today, but I'm curious what you guys think. Who's a better, more explosive deep ball wide receiver, Tyreek Hill or Deshaun Jackson? What do you guys think?
Hill.
Tyreek Hill.
Hill.
Well,
what do you think?
Deshaun Jackson,
a better route runner.
More dynamic.
Say that again, Adam.
I said I love Deshaun Jackson, but he was limited in a lot of other areas except for that go route. Hill can do it all. I think he can play big underneath. that's not something Deshaun Jackson could do.
I agree with that. Deshaun Jackson he could track the ball in the air, and he had great track speed. But I didn't realize till recently, maybe till last year, how it's like thick. And Tyreek Hill's almost like a running back. He can put the ball underneath. He has some power with him too. So definitely he's up there for sure. And I agree, Doug. He's one that moves the needle. Like, he's a special, unique player in the NFL. He really is that explosive. All right, number 4, Lamar Jackson, man. It's right by 95, man. Going over to Baltimore, Lamar. They're looking pretty good out there. The offense is running through him. He's actually become, he always was a dynamic player, but now he's starting to get involved in the passing game. He has a good connection with Zay Flowers, Odell Beckham now. They have Keaton Mitchell as an explosive running back out the backfield, but, the offense runs through Lamar. I like it. And the number 5 is hard for me. You could go Jalen Hurts, but, he's kind of been tailing off the past couple of weeks. It could do that, but just for fun, I'll throw Tua out there. I think the Dolphins are looking pretty good. If the AFC is the number 1 seed and they kind of they tighten up at the end of the year, I want to give Tua the award there. So that's what I'm looking at.
All right, Jalen, who you got here?
I'm not mad at that. My number 1 would actually be Tyreek Hill, though, just simply because he's doing something historic. And I'm not under the belief that, the MVP should be a quarterback award or solely or exclusively a quarterback award. Because if we look at the other tremendous wide receiver seasons, like the record that Tyreek Hill has placed to break, Calvin Johnson, if we look back at that year, a quarterback didn't win an award. Adrian Peterson won that award. Now, he did something freaky as well, running over 2,000 yards with a torn ACL. And then I guess the third best wide receiver season would be Cooper Kupp from 2021. A quarterback did win that award, but Aaron Rodgers had 2 interceptions that year. So I don't see any quarterback matching that level of play because what he was doing in 2021 was just simply ridiculous. So I don't think there's any quarterback that's matching that level of play. So I don't think that they should supersede Tyreek. So Tyreek is my number 1. Dak Prescott, while I don't think there's any player playing on Aaron Rodgers' 2021 level, Dak Prescott is damn close. And he's probably the best quarterback in the NFL this season. And it pains me to say that. So
I'm with you, man.
But Dak is balling. I think he's top 3 in passing yards and passing touchdowns. And I think he's in the top 5 as well as interceptions thrown as well. And the Dallas Cowboys are the number seed in the NFC at this point. So it's hard to argue with that. My number 3 would be Christian McCaffrey.
That's a good one.
Because outside of Tyreek Hill, he might be the best non-quarterback offensive player in the NFL. And I think that he elevates San Francisco so much, not even just from game to game. If you look at series when he's not in, that entire offense looks different. With Brock Purdy in, without Brock Purdy, I just think he's that dynamic of a player. And if you look back yesterday, I think he had 130 yards on 7 carries up until one point. I don't know what he ended with, but that was just a freaky average. And he's so perfect for that Shanahan system.
Yes.
So he would be my number 3. My number 4 would be Lamar Jackson as well, just simply because he's running like the 2019 Lamar Jackson. I think he has about 700 rushing yards as well. So he's top, 15 in passing and top 20 in rushing. So he's kind of like the Shohei Ohtani of football to me, because just simply capable to do. And then I'm not watching the Commanders or the Commanders not playing yesterday. I had the chance of watching that entire, Baltimore Raven game. And he put the team on his back quarter through the air. He wasn't necessarily running, and he didn't have the best throwing game yesterday. But it was almost like that didn't matter when it was crunch time. And those are the kind of moments that we look for in the MVP. And I agree with George. My number 5 would be Tua, just simply because a lot of people wrote Tua off. A lot of people thought that Tua wasn't going to be playing anymore when they go back,
including Brian Flores.
Right. So if you see he's top 5 in passing yards, and the only reason that he's not in the top 2 or 3 is because Miami is smoking so many boots in the second half. They run the ball. I think that, if the games were closer, I think that he would be closer to that number 1 and number 2 in passing yards like he was at the beginning of the season. And I think that he's the reason that the Miami offense, they have all those speed demons, but it doesn't work without his timing and his precision, right?
Yeah.
I think that Brock Purdy's more scheme dependent under Kyle Shanahan than Tua is with Mike McDaniel. 2 great offensive minds, but I think that Brock Purdy is contributing the type of precision, the type of command for the offense, the type of structure for the offense that Tua is doing. So that's why I would give him the slight edge for my number 5 over Brock Purdy.
There were 2 offensive coordinator jobs open this previous offseason, the Ravens and the Commanders. And I knew when the Ravens got Todd Monken from Georgia, I've watched that offense for 2 years now very closely, and it was built for Lamar Jackson. The things they did there in Georgia, you can see them doing it up in Baltimore. Baltimore already had the tight ends. I know Mark Andrews goes down, but man, I like Lamar in the pole position for the lead this year. I will say if they were ever giving it to somebody, and I know that everybody knows I love Georgia, but when the Ravens made the deal for Roquan Smith and paid him, that defense changed immediately, and he deserves a lot of credit because that side of the ball for them is humming as well. Second, I have Tyreek Hill. I completely agree. I agree with Jalen. I didn't have Purdy on my list because I have McCaffrey. Imagine trading all those assets for a running back and it paying off when everybody's trying to move off of running backs as quickly as possible. And then the only one that I didn't, and I think you have to put Dak in the conversation. He's having one of these, just outrageous seasons, and good on Mike on the head coach too, because he was getting pounded for riding Aaron Rodgers' coattails. So for McCarthy to kind of have one of these offensive explosion type years, I hate to say it, but good for the both of them. The only one I don't have, and I just had to throw him in there, CJ Stroud is playing incredible ball. And that Houston Texans team doesn't win 2 games if he's not on the roster, maybe not 1 game. So I just thought it'd be a little tip of the cap to Stroud because he's been fantastic. Adam, do you have anybody else on the list that we missed for you?
Yeah. You guys pretty much said the first couple with me, but the 2 guys, I don't know, maybe they're right on the fringe, but Micah Parsons, I don't have the stats in front of me, but it's all about game changing for me, MVP awards or whatever, and how they're making it. I think without him, this Cowboys defense is not doing what they're doing. And in the same right, I think you look at Cleveland and Myles Garrett, they're not doing the same things unless he's doing what they're doing in defense. So although those are 2 fringe top 5 guys, other than what you guys talked about, those are 2 guys that, if they could really come on these last couple games and really just like pad the stats, that's what it's going to have to be about for those kind of guys. But I think far and away, it's going to be one of the quarterbacks. But yeah, Lamar Jackson, you mentioned the new offensive coordinator. I was going to say the same thing. I think if the trajectory keeps going like this, he's probably going to be the one that gets it. Purdy, he's a system guy, but all around, Lamar Jackson and Hill are my 2 favorites for the number 1 right now.
Sorry, Doug. I love that Myles. Not to cut you off. I love that Myles Garrett pick. He was my MVP throughout the first half of the season. He's kind of tapered off after that shoulder injury, but I love that Myles Garrett pick. I think he's the best defensive player in the NFL.
He's a freako.
He's
one of those space aliens that just say.
Cleveland is a great example of a couple moves, right people in charge, how quick a team can turn around too. So, everyone it was all on Deshaun Watson, man. If they just had a more competent, healthy quarterback, I think this team go a lot farther than people thought.
Well, and they stuck with the coach too, right? It would have been easy to move off Stefanski early, and he's kind of proven what he could do there.
And losing Nick Chubb,
Say it again. And
losing Chubb, and they're still performing like they are,
Losing Chubb killed at least 2 of my fantasy teams, that's for sure. If they go, I'm surprised you mentioned Parsons earlier, Adam. I'm surprised there isn't being more conversations as far as retreads go about Dan Quinn, who took the Falcons to a Super Bowl and lost in horrific fashion. That defense was not good before Dan Quinn got here. I put a poll up today. I'm curious what you guys think. I asked, if the Commanders go retread, would you prefer Bill Belichick, Dan Quinn, Brian Flores, or Mike Tomlin?
Interesting.
And I didn't even realize until after I posted the poll that it was all defensive-minded guys.
I'm about to say the defensive guys.
There really aren't any retread offensive guys. It's odd. But let's see, Jalen, let's start with you. What do you think about those 4 options? Which ones intrigue you the most if they're going retread?
Oh man, that's a. And I'm opposed. I'm not necessarily opposed, but I'm an advocate for hiring an offensive coach with our next coach. just simply because how the way the NFL is played. But
Right.
that's a fantastic foursome right there, to be honest. And out of those four, I might, and this might shock some people, I might lean Brian Flores. Because if you look at what he's done with that Minnesota Vikings defense, that was the worst defense in NFL history last year. The worst defense in NFL history. They just allowed 0 points. They had a shutout yesterday. So I think that, and even going back to, his time in New England, where their defense was successful. Was that Bill Belichick or was that Brian Flores? So I might go with Brian Flores because I think he might be the best defensive mind in football right now as far as going against these modern schemes. Because think about when he first got to Miami, when he was sending those 0 pressures and flustering everybody and just keeping Miami's head above water with terrible quarterback play with like Ryan Fitzpatrick. But they were winning games because he was blitzing your face off. And that kind of covers up some of the talent deficiencies you have as well when you're such a scheme guru. So I might go with Brian Flores and shock a couple of people with that answer.
I think we all agree with you out of this group, Jalen, that I think we'd all prefer an offensive guy. And like I said, I didn't even realize they were all defensive guys till I posted. Adam, any of those names intrigue you? Oh, Adam dropped. George?
Adam, want to go ahead or you want me to do it? Because Adam's gone. All right. Yeah. So basically, for me, it's tough. So Brian Flores, I do like that pick. It's tough. Dan Quinn, I think he's going to become a head coach next year. I think he was a hot ticket last year, and I think he kind of wanted to stay because he wanted to develop Micah Parsons more. I know they have a really good relationship, so that's why I stayed in Dallas. But I love the fact that Dan Quinn basically can create so many turnovers. I want a team that creates that's a problem we had DC. Even when we were like a top 5, top 4 defense over the past couple of years, we never created turnovers. We were more of like a bend but don't break type of defense.
For sport, George.
What's that? Exactly. He's not doing anything yet, so we'll see that. But anyways, though, we saw it with Diggs, we see it with Bland now. That just shows you that the scheme is effective. Whatever they're doing, it's not like a bait and switch kind of zone scheme where they're getting interceptions and they're generating pressures that way. Stephon Gilmore was punching the ball out on A.J. Brown yesterday, creating turnovers. I like the mentality. I think it's like, during the show, during the broadcast, they're talking about having like a turnover crate where they're kind of throwing the turnovers and kind of collective turning over the balls for the defense. It's actually awesome. I love seeing that. So I do like that. So he would definitely be very intriguing to me. Him, number 1, maybe 1A. It's hard because I hate retreads, man. I think retreads is the worst. I want a new perspective. I want to get a new coach. But dude, if you told me hey, Mike Tomlin is available, and he could potentially come to DC, I can't turn that down, man. Mike Tomlin is one of my favorite coaches of all time. I think you need a coach that can relate to players, that can motivate players. I think Mike Tomlin has that in spades. I think he's a great defensive mind as well. But I do think Dan Quinn probably has him more in the X's and O's aspect right now. So I think I'd rather get a coach on the upward trajectory than someone that's kind of going down. I'd rather take Dan Quinn. But Mike Tomlin, man, I would love to have him in DC. That's my guy, man. I love him.
They haven't won a ton of playoff games.
They win though, but yeah, they haven't won. But they haven't had a quarterback. I mean, I don't know. You're right. They haven't won a lot of playoff games in a while, but they don't. They have a winning season for 20 straight years or something like that. I love that.
They do a lot of winning.
Yeah, and a tough division too. They have the Ravens and the Browns. They have a pretty tough division up there, and they still win. And the Bengals. But yeah, go ahead.
All right, we finish each of these Monday shows with our goats and donkeys. It doesn't have to be Commanders. It doesn't even have to be football if you don't want it. But we'll go around, and I'm curious your best and worst from the weekend. Adam, you ready for this?
Yeah. The 49ers, the offense and defense all around. I just right now, after seeing, the Eagles get pounded like they did, I'm impressed with Dallas, but not like the 49ers. I think the 49ers are in the Super Bowl. That's my pick easily right now. And AFC's up for grabs, but I really think that, across the board, McCaffrey, Debo, Purdy, Kittle, those guys had a hell of a game. And then, of course, Bosa steps in. We talk about Chase Young over there, but, Randy Gregory is a guy that's got, not much playing time, but anytime he comes in, he seems to get a sack and pressure. So, their scheme, their system is really friendly. I just think it's a backlog. That's why you're not seeing, someone like Young maybe get more opportunities than some of the other guys. But, that was the best. And as far as donkeys go, I feel bad for him. Kadarius Toney, he's a guy I scouted coming out because it's not, everyone could put on him. It happened to Terry McLaurin. We've seen it happen to so many receivers around this league. If they get the thumbs up from the refs or they don't check, it was pretty obvious, glaring, but it's hard to, you lose a game on a penalty like that. So, I have to give it to him.
He's been catching a lot of those donkeys this year, Adam.
Yeah.
George, what is your goats and donkeys for the weekend?
Man, so he took my donkey for sure. So definitely Kadarius Toney's number one on there. I'm looking around trying to think of other stories around the league. For one, I want to make maybe a team I can say is a donkey. The Chargers, man. I feel like the Chargers, like they basically had so much hype going into the season, but they're just not putting it together. They're sitting there at 5-8 with a quarterback like Justin Herbert, with the talent on offense, Austin Eckler. They're just not putting it together. They're just losing week to week, and they're going to be out of the playoffs.
George, not to cut you off, but everybody thought that Kellen Moore was going to be the thing.
Yeah,
and it's odd. Maybe everybody did know that he's not the thing.
Gotcha. Yeah, for sure. Maybe it isn't him. And so he's definitely falling apart there. I have another donkey out there just for the heck of it. Trevor Lawrence, man. I think, he was supposed to be the chosen one. He was supposed to be – I actually like Trevor Lawrence a lot. But, like he had a tough game against the Browns. I was watching that game live. He wanted to put the game on his back, had a couple of turnovers. I wasn't really impressed with him there. I think he can still turn it around. But that's just one thing I'm kind of keeping an eye on. And then GOATs we talked about Dak, but let's do Lamar, man. I think Lamar, it's kind of fun. It's kind of watching him kind of put the team on his back. I think he's getting his offense together. He was creating. It was actually fun watching. Kind of like gave me like old Mike Vick vibes. He was getting blitz. He was creating. He was buying time in the pocket, throwing the ball downfield, getting Zay Flowers involved. I enjoyed watching Lamar Jackson yesterday. So it's my go.
If he wins the MVP, it'll be 2 in 6 years, right?
Something like that, yeah. I think it was 2019, right?
Already got one.
Yeah. It's a little jacket worthy right there.
It's wild when you think about it. Jalen, what do you think? Who you got?
As far as GOATs, I'm gonna go with Justin Fields. Because Justin Fields showed you what Justin Fields experiment can look like when it's going well yesterday, right? They upset the division leader, Detroit Lions. And the reason that I'm pointing out Justin Fields is that if the Chicago Bears, and if Justin Fields has a strong last couple of weeks, the Chicago Bears may elect to keep Justin Fields, which shakes up the draft for Washington. Now, does that mean a Caleb Williams or a Drake May slide? And does that mean that we look at him with our potential top 5 pick? So that was something that sparked my interest yesterday. I think he had about 280 all-purpose yards, but just with his legs, his mobility. When he's on, it allows you to dominate the game with time of possession. They kept the ball away from the Detroit Lions yesterday, and that's how they ultimately won the game. And as far as donkeys, I don't know if this has been spoken about, but it's a lot of mid-football being played this year. It's a lot of bad football teams, and I think a lot of that has to do with the correlation of quarterback injuries. But like yesterday during the 1 o'clock window, I took a nap. Like I was bored watching those games. I'm glad that I woke up to see the exciting end to the Ravens and the Rams. But that was just something that I took away sitting on my couch yesterday because, we're so in tune. And, I'm always at FedEx Field on those games on Sunday. But just sitting back looking at the elite-wide aspect of things, there are a lot of bad teams. It's no in between this year. You're either good, and I don't even think that you're elite, but you're either good or you're just horrible. And like I said, I think a lot of that has to do with, the quarterback injuries and going back to the Chargers, like George Conley said, now Justin Herbert might be potentially out for the year. So it's not getting any better.
Hey, Jalen, real quick. Sorry to interrupt you, Doug.
Very good.
I haven't actually asked you about this yet. How do you feel about Sam Howell in the draft picks? Would you potentially go Caleb Williams or Drake May, or you want to stick with Howell? How are you feeling?
So if you would have asked me a month ago, I would have told you to stick with Sam Howell, build the offensive line, and let's go. Because in that 3-game stretch, which was it? It was the Eagles, the Patriots, and the Seahawks. Sam had made some special throws. But Sam hasn't done anything in the last month but throw 1 interception and throw more pick sixes. Throw 4 times as many pick sixes than he has touchdowns, right? And, I don't know if you guys have followed me on Twitter. I'm big on Caleb Williams. Caleb Williams played in my same youth football club, right? So I've seen the progression of Caleb Williams since he was a child. And I know that boy's arm talent has been special since he was in the 8th grade. I've seen it with my own eyes, right? So I don't think that, a couple of games this year is going to stop or affect what I've seen for the last 10 years. Like I've been seeing him since I was in college. He's a lot younger than me, but I even coach in that organization as well. So I know the type of talent that Caleb has, and with the last month that Sam has had, if I have the opportunity to get Caleb Williams, I'm going to go select Caleb Williams. Now, if you're going to ask me about a Drake May and Jaden Daniels, who I love, I'm not as so sure about, Sam Howell or those guys. But if you were just talking exclusively Caleb Williams with, the Bears potentially keeping Justin Fields, give me Caleb Williams all the way. But if it's a toss-up between, or if you have the option of getting Drake May, I may select, Olu Fashanu and build along that offensive line because I don't think that the gap between Drake May and Sam Howell is as drastic as the gap between Caleb Williams and Sam Howell.
To your point about Justin Fields, and I completely agree with you. Imagine if you could add Marvin Harrison to the other side, or DJ Moore, or a top flight, or Olu there, and say Brock Bowers later to put around him. I mean, you could do some really nice things to make that offense pop quickly because I think you can build around Justin Fields. I've been on record. I thought that was one of Ron's big mistakes was not trading up that year for Justin Fields. They gave up 1 first-round draft pick. It would not have set anybody back, but you'd had somebody that you were working with. Jalen, I will follow your mid statement up with my goats for the week, which is actually the backup quarterback in the NFL. Good to be a backup quarterback in the NFL these days because there's almost as many of them starting as there are actual perennial starters in the NFL. And my donkey for the week goes to Patrick Mahomes. Imagine going to Josh Allen after the game and complaining about how the ref screwed you. No handshake. Just told him it was the worst call that he'd ever seen, and that's what lost them the game. The nerve to go up to the other quarterback and say that. So shame on you, Patrick. Mm-hmm. All right, fellas. Jalen, thank you. It's been too long since you've been on the show, so appreciate you hopping on today. And what's coming up for you on the channel?
Absolutely. It has been too long. I think I haven't been on here since 2021. One of my first appearances. So I would definitely have to get back on. With us playing football again this week, we're going to be doing a preview for the Los Angeles Rams. We're going to be doing a recap. Our reaction videos on YouTube have been getting a lot of traction. So I'm pretty sure I'm going to do that. And look out for our first mock draft of the year because it's that time of the year. December, we don't have any playoffs to look forward to. So I think I'm going to drop my mock draft 1.0 on the channel, on the YouTube channel this week. So be on the lookout for that.
All right, buddy. We appreciate you. And fellas, George, Adam, we'll see you on Monday.
Peace.
Yes, peace.